So if you didn't see my short discussion earlier, my name is Brian Hoffman. I'm the CEO of OB1 and also the project lead for OpenBazaar, which is what I'm going to talk about today. How many of you guys know what OpenBazaar is or have heard of it? Okay, good amount of you. That's very cool. So I'm just going to talk a little bit about what it is and how it works. I know this is the business track, so I won't go into a Paul Sports-like description of the technology. Okay, so 2009, we all know what happened then, right? Satoshi came up with Bitcoin and pretty much turned the financial world on its head. And shortly thereafter, in about 2010, there was a gentleman who was living in Texas at the time who discovered Bitcoin and was working really hard on a libertarian idea called the Silk Road, which was released in 2011. The thing that made Silk Road so interesting at the time, and still probably to this day, is that it proudly flaunted the ability for Bitcoin to be used in an uncensorable way for commerce across the world. And fortunately or unfortunately, we can actually attribute a lot of Bitcoin's early success to the Silk Road. It really proved that Bitcoin was a transactional currency, and it could be used to do whatever by whomever. But as all interesting things go, in 2013, Ross Ulbricht was discovered to be the creator and the operator of Silk Road and was subsequently sentenced to life in prison for his actions on the network. So that kind of left an interesting situation. Well, what would happen if somebody could actually create an uncensorable marketplace but was just as decentralized as Bitcoin itself? So Silk Road, in its instance, was a single point of failure, right? It was just a server in Iceland sitting on cloud storage just like any other website. And once they found that, they took it off and it was gone. And all that data that was stored on those servers got captured. In fact, each and every one of the merchants was pretty much rounded up and arrested and prosecuted for all their participation. Do we have the technology today to create a truly free and open marketplace? Now, the idea of Silk Road originally started as a very libertarian movement, not just to sell drugs or guns, but as an experiment to see, does society have the ability to create its own marketplace outside of the reach of government and normal societal laws? Well, the answer to the question of whether or not we can do it is yes, we can. And in 2014 in April, at the Toronto Bitcoin hackathon, this team of developers created something called Dark Market. It's kind of hard to see here, but there's a couple of the guys here. One of the most infamous Bitcoin developers, Amir Taki, of LibBitcoin fame, came up with the idea for Dark Market, which was basically a way to create an uncensorable Silk Road. In fact, that's what he called it. And some of the other guys that went on to work on Airbits, and they're now Edge. But they won the hackathon. They got $20,000, and they took the money from that hackathon and they continued to work on something called Dark Wallet. And I don't know if you guys, some of you probably were around, or maybe a lot of you were, but Dark Wallet was another really high profile project. It was aimed at helping money laundering, basically. So they were not really shying away from the really questionable use of Bitcoin. But I think a lot of what we forget is that the early days of Bitcoin was really focused not just on building a better PayPal. It was really about thumbing your nose to the government and to states and saying, look, we are the people. We created this currency. We operate as a global society, not just as citizens that are being told what to do. So the dark market was only 24 hours worth of work. It was touted as the safe and untouchable marketplace. Now, safe safe it was picked very, very purposefully because the main argument for the Silk Road's defense was that Silk Road was actually creating a safer alternative to buying drugs on the streets, where you're 6 times more likely to get assaulted or robbed or mugged when you're trying to purchase drugs. So they considered it safe and also untouchable. The question after that was like, okay, they won the hackathon, what are they going to do with it? And the team that built it decided not to go forward building it because they wanted to focus on Dark Wallet. And so they released the code open source on GitHub and left it out there for other people to do. So what now? One of the developers on that said, he's quoted as saying, "It's the seed of the imagination. Now that people know that this is possible, someone will actually work on it." Sometimes that is what deters someone from working on something, is when it seems impossible. So just like Bitcoin showed us that digital money is possible, this was proving that a marketplace could be created. And so we forked it. I forked it. I hit the little button on GitHub and forked it, which didn't seem like a lot at the time, but the amount of people and interest that that was out there for dark market kind of transferred over to OpenBazaar. Not at first. The original post on Reddit, you can go and find it now in the R Bitcoin subreddit, where I was asking for people to help me. I think the top comment is "fuck you." So so the people weren't extremely excited at first, but they came around. And so this is what it looked like a couple weeks after it started. It's not much, but it was very exciting. But we put in a lot of hard work, and eventually we released version 1.0. Now this is what version 1.0 looked like. At the time, we thought it looked really, really cool, and it seems really, really basic. But the work that it took underneath to make sure that it was something that could scale up to a bunch of users and actually function properly, it's a lot of work. I mean, I think people underestimate how much effort is actually involved in designing protocols and building software on top of it and being able to overcome challenges of decentralization. But we did, and then we did some more hard work. And just recently, in November, we came out with a 2.0 version. This is 2.0. It's a little bit cut off, but conceptually, it's not that much different. But we shifted to something called IPFS, which is kind of like a next generation decentralized storage network, and it helped us solve a lot of the problems that we had to write from scratch early on. So there wasn't a lot of code to go off of to build really strong peer-to-peer software. Like, how do you get around the fact that some guy in Botswana on some really crummy 56K or even worse connection is trying to sell things to somebody in the US who has FiOS? There's firewalls, there's networking issues, all these things that you don't have a problem with when you slap your servers up on Amazon. You have to overcome, and you have to code around all those situations. Well, now that these protocols and networks are starting to mature, it actually is becoming pretty easy to start building these apps on top of this, which is really exciting 4 years later. Now I think there are a few competitors in this space, but we have had we've had a lot of time to let people use the network and learn from them and discover the ways that people like to game decentralized systems, like the difference between the user experience from a centralized marketplace that you might see on eBay or Amazon and what we're actually trying to accomplish. You may be asking yourself, like, why do we care? We have Amazon, we have eBay, they're all really great. Well, there's kind of three main areas that I think it improves upon. One is freedom. So the marketplaces that are out there right now are controlled by corporations and ostensibly the government, right? Because they have to abide by the corporate jurisdiction that they're operating in. In fact, the marketplace, like finding a global marketplace that operates in every single country on the planet all together with the same rules and everything, it's like it doesn't exist. The day that we launched OpenBazaar, we were installed and running in over 182 countries, like within a couple hours, which is pretty incredible. I don't think that's maybe ever been done before. And the marketplace itself, like what you sell, what you can do on the market is up to the users. Some of you may have seen I was showing off the app earlier, and I showed there's one part of the network where you can buy drugs, you can buy marijuana. That's because we as the developers don't have control over the content of the network. We have control over the network itself, the rules that we abide by. We give people tools to filter, to search, to do those things, but ultimately it's up to the people who reside on the network to decide what the content is. Privacy. There's no middleman, which means that all of your communications are not going through anybody else for snooping or whatever. It goes directly encrypted to the person you're dealing with. So when you hand out your physical address and your name and everything, that only goes to the merchant. It only goes to the person who actually needs to know that information. And now with the new version, we have Tor as well, so you can be completely anonymous. And then the last one, which I think is actually probably one of the most overlooked aspects of it, is just the fact that it's all open and community driven. I mean, when you talk about using Amazon or eBay, your business operates under the rules that you assume are going to stay the same, but tomorrow they could change all those rules. They could say, like Amazon did, we're not allowing, or eBay, Bitcoin mining equipment. Your whole business goes away like that in a day because they changed the rules arbitrarily. And it might not even be a legal thing. It may just be like, we don't like Bitcoin mining software, we don't like Donald Trump t-shirts, we don't like whatever. You're at their corporate whim. Like I said, you can buy and sell anything. Right now on the network, we're seeing a lot of things like housing for rental. This is an advertisement for like an Airbnb. He calls it OBNB. Renting out rooms. You can do physical products globally. Digital goods are really awesome because you can instantly deliver them to the users. And you can even offer employment services, cross-border programming services, all kinds of different things that is often very difficult because of the payment transfers and dealing with all of that. It's pretty seamless when you can use cryptocurrency. So it's a powerful peer-to-peer network, censorship resistant. You can earn and spend your Bitcoin there, and soon, hopefully Monday, you'll be able to spend Bitcoin Cash as well as Zcash, and hopefully soon Litecoin. And you control your own business. It kind of merges the best of both worlds. It gives you the power of running your own website and business with the advantages of being on a network like an Amazon or an eBay. We're all together. Soon, in the next few months, we're going to be introducing something called Curated Content. This is the ability for people to create something similar to like a Pinterest board. You can find like products and services or vendors that you like trust or you like, that you want other people to see, and you have your own presence in OpenBazaar, and you're actually able to monetize them. So in this case, you see like this is like an ad. So you would be, if you drove traffic to those things, you could monetize it and make money just by doing that. You wouldn't be selling or buying anything in that case. Like I said, we're introducing additional coins. I don't really want to push this too hard because I think you guys are probably all inundated with tokens, but the curated content that I mentioned is going to be it's going to be serviced by the token that we're coming out with. And if you're interested in learning more, you can go to openbazaar.org/token and read about what we're planning. It's a good start. We're not quite there yet. The listings, this is all probably out of date, but we have had, I think, close to 600,000 downloads, installs on OpenBazaar, and it's closer to 200 countries at this point. This deck is a little bit old, but I think it's a really good start. It's actually a good amount of people to install a desktop app just to buy and sell things with Bitcoin. Later this year, we're going to be introducing a mobile client as well as a web-based version. So I think that will really help with adoption, make it easier for people to use. But we really could appreciate you guys spreading the word and learning more about what we're doing. So how can you help? Visit openbazaar.org and learn more about what we're doing. Download the software, run it. It's pretty simple. Buy and sell something. I mean, I know the fees are high, but all the merchants and stuff on the network are taking the time to set up their storefront and accept cryptocurrency to support the cause. And I think now with Bitcoin Cash and Zcash, you have less of a reason not to try it. And you can join our community. We have a bunch. We have Discords, Telegram, Slack, everything. So that's that. And I'll just show you real quick kind of what the software looks like. So this is just one that I have. Now, I have everything visible. You guys are getting the censorship resistant version. But you can see, I mean, like right now, the network this is just kind of showing like a bunch of stuff. But, and it's like pretty random. I mean, it's like, it's weird shit. But, you know, but like, this is kind of the Wild Wild West, right? Like, so, you know, this isn't like the vanilla white bread version of Amazon that you see, and it's not catered to your taste. It doesn't know about you yet, you know, it doesn't understand, hasn't been viewing you watching you look at websites and stuff to know what to serve you. And those are all things that maybe get rolled into this kind of marketplace later on, but, you know, it kind of gives you the feeling of like when those marketplaces were starting up. And, you know, and unfortunately, you know, like, there's still like crazy stuff, like it gets even crazier, right? Like these guys are like clearly selling drugs on the network. I mean, like seriously. And they're probably, and some of these have ratings and stuff, so people have bought it and done it. And, you know, I think it's not so much that, the idea that like, this is what it should be about drugs. It's really just about the fact that like, it's an open marketplace. I mean, these guys are putting their lives out to try and do this, and you know, they probably will get busted. I will tell you right now, this week we actually got a call from the FBI to ask about how these things work. So they're not like stupid, they understand the nature of this stuff, but it's our job to educate people like, what is decentralization about? What can and can't it do? Like, what are we trying to do? What are the positive things that we're doing? Like we talked a little bit about giving people more control over it. Like, if I'm just like a teenager and I want to like look up video games and stuff, like I shouldn't be inundated with like drugs when I open up the app, right? Like those things are not, like you don't have to remove them from society in order for you to have a good experience. It's about giving people the control to filter, to curate, to sort, to, you know, build software that shows people what they do want to see. Right now, this is just an unfiltered like blast of like what's out there. But those are improvements and enhancements that we want to get to eventually. And it takes people using it and learning about how to do that well, because we don't have the ability to just remove things from the network. We don't have the ability to just not show people certain things unless they you know, direct it. It's more of an opt-in thing than an opt-out. So anyway, it's hopefully this gives you like an interesting look at like what it's about and the kind of craziness about building this. But if you have any questions or anything, I'd be glad to answer them now. Okay, I'll get you first real quick.
So what prevents OB1 from being shut down like Silk Road?
So that's a really great question. So you'll notice at the top, there's a OpenBazaar icon and there's an OB1 icon. Now OB1, we run this search engine. So in here, what we have is like, so there's a little flag here. You can report listings. We remove illicit listings, and we also proactively remove listings. So if you're searching with an OB1, you'll have a pretty like normal experience. Like we filter that. If you click on these other ones, these can be added manually. Anybody can create a search engine, and anybody can add it in by just putting the URL of that search engine in there and add it in, like a plugin for a browser. So so these guys are like kind of at their own risk showing the drug stuff. They'll probably get a subpoena or something at some point. But we don't. What's that?
Like, does it put you at risk at all?
So one thing to note with this network, you don't store stuff unless you visit it or you pursue it. So there's no reason for you to be concerned that like, you know, there's drug stuff all over your computer just because you're using the app, right? All of this stuff is like, you went after that. You can run in Tor mode if you're nervous about that and want to protect yourself, but that is one thing to note. So there's no way for people to push bad things into your computer through the software. Yeah, so.
Cool. Thank you.
So all of the code is open source. What is to prevent someone from changing colors to like orange? What is it?
Nothing. Nothing. I mean, there really isn't. I mean, the idea is that, I mean, it's just like Bitcoin. Like, what's to stop it from forking Bitcoin and creating Bitcoin Cash? Nothing. They did. The idea is that you're creating a community, not just a piece of software, right? Like, there's more to it than just the code, the zeros and ones, right? You have to build people that support your cause. They believe in the way you're running the project, the ideals that you hold. and they contribute to that. They're not just contributing to like one repository. So,
What if I'm a bad actor trying to do something malicious? What is going to happen to that? Is there any sort of prevention of that?
In what way are you thinking?
You guys like own anything that would prevent me from having that sort of access to?
Threat to the OpenBazaar.
I think that the main threats would be like one, getting access to the source code or something somehow, and like helping to that. When we have keys that we like manage, and we don't, we are the only ones that have control over the source code. The other thing would be maybe an exploit in the software itself. That's going to happen. Software has bugs, software has issues, and we patch those as they are. Sometimes it's a protocol level bug that you don't know. Like, what happens if somebody, tries to like scam somebody? Like, we had one interesting thing, like if you click on, let's see, it's fine. Cannot be found. Hopefully someone will load up here.
Is the source code available?
Yeah, the source code's on GitHub.
Okay.
You can go to github.com/OpenBazaar. So like this is a storefront. So you see up here, he has like his address, and then like it says 5 stars. We had like a small thing where like the stars only show up if you have a rating, but you could edit the location. So they put stars in their name. Like, oh, I have 1,300 sales and 5-star rating. I mean, that's like a bug, right? They can exploit that, and people were purchasing it and saying, hey, this is not what I, but how do you account for all those things? You got to deal with this. Yeah.
So before, on the left, you had the ratings, and like on Amazon, you have people who can do ratings, and then they have verified, buyers or something like that. Mm-hmm. Given that this is, there's no central sort of authority to get like a refund or something like that, someone's reputation is kind of important. So do you have, can anybody do a rating and, fill up the queue with positive ratings, or do you limit it to people who purchased, from this person or that product or something like that?
Yeah, so the reputation system is pretty elementary at this point, but no, you have to purchase something to do a rating. So at the end of, like, once you unlock the funds and the merchant gets paid, you get a rating review sheet. You can put in a comment and put your stars and everything in and do that. So that's what shows up on these stores. So like if you click on, let's see, I don't know if it'll, okay, so like this is one review, and this is kind of like what you get, like a form to fill in this stuff.
Given that it is back to the open source thing, there are other privacy coins that are building marketplaces on top of your code right now. Do you have thoughts on that? And also, did you guys ever have the discussion of focusing on being that marketplace, say, protocol versus actually building your own marketplace?
Yeah, I mean, I think so. So there's a couple of those out there. Like for instance, Particle is working on, like, they were like Shadow Coin or something at some point. And they value privacy over everything. I mean, our idea is that, like, the payment piece can be agnostic. Like, if you choose to use Monero for the payment rail, that should be your choice. Like, we're gonna have Zcash or whatever. So like that is not hugely an issue for us. And because of the way that the network is, like, your privacy is protected because only the people that need to know have the orders and stuff. I mean, this just seemed like a much better approach than to like start jamming into blockchain, which is like what some people try to do. It's just one strategy. I think we separate ourselves from the other marketplaces like that. I think they try to bake everything into the protocol and do that. Our idea is that, we're building, like, the contracts that power all of this are like agnostic. They're just JSON. So like you could use it on any platform. You could do it offline. So we're trying to build like more of like a very like neutral network and protocol. It's not tied directly to the blockchain. We use the blockchain where it makes sense, not just for everything.
Since there's no platform fees, no listing fees, so how do you make money?
It just comes up every single time. Well, OpenBazaar doesn't, and we don't want OpenBazaar ever to make money. It's just it's a neutral protocol. Like Bitcoin, there's no like Bitcoin network that takes fees. I mean, the miners get fees, but they're part of the network, right? Like, an OpenBazaar is the same way. Merchants and buyers and moderators, they get money or spend money. Now, OB1, our company, intends to make money in other ways. So for one, like we're working on a mobile application that's going to be like kind of like a advanced mobile app, and it's going to have some other stuff that we monetize within that app that helps you manage your storefront, things like that. So really it's all about profiting at the edges and not at the core protocol. Now the token I mentioned, that is going to be like a protocol level, obviously, like way to make money, but it's an opt-in thing. It's not part, it doesn't require you to like pay to list an item. It doesn't pay, you don't pay when you sell something, like all that will remain free.
You said unlock the funds earlier, so does OpenBazaar act as like a escrow service?
Yeah, the way that this works is that when you purchase something from a merchant, it takes their public key from their wallet, your public key, and then the moderator, which is like a dispute resolution person, creates a 3-person multi-sig escrow, and 2 of 3. And then the money goes into the escrow. When the merchant delivers the product, you release the funds from the escrow, they sign the transaction, goes to the blockchain. So the 2 of you decide to move the money out. So it stays in escrow until you agree. Yes, Wayne, what now?
Slight technical question. How do you handle search on distributed?
Third parties. That's kind of what I was showing in the beginning, right? With the like these guys up at the top. Those are central endpoints. So anybody can call the network, create a search index, and then add it to the app. In the first version of OpenBazaar, we had a completely decentralized search, but it's just an awful experience. You have to, like if you're looking for a bicycle and it's on one of those crappy connections in Africa or whatever, like you have to get somehow to that data. And there's not a lot of really great ways technically to do that. So the temporary kind of fix until we get to something really awesome for that is to do third-party searches. So
where do all the assets live that are like the thumbnails and the listing?
For the search?
I guess where they live, period, so that they can be.
Oh, okay. So basically what happens is like in search, for instance, I would say search engine, which is on like a central endpoint, and they return like a list of listings, IDs, which are just IPFS hashes in the network. So then all these thumbnails are loaded actually from the computers that are hosting that content. The people that could host this content could be the person who published the listing, the merchant themselves, or it could be anybody who's viewed that content. They kind of seed that content on the network, sort of like BitTorrent. So like all this content could be coming from a bunch of different peers who either viewed it or published it. And that's the same for all the content.
Just one last quick thing. Do you see a role for intermediaries, like somebody running like a OpenBazaar hub? Whose role is to, instead of having self-hosted content, allow some of that content to be put into somebody else's computer so I can take my laptop offline?
Yeah, so that's kind of the way it works. Like, well, the search engines are a good example of that. They crawl all that content and cache it themselves too. Yeah, that also is very similar to Filecoin, which is what IPFS is doing. So they're trying to be persistent storage, right, for this. So like if you're a merchant and you want to make sure that your stuff stays online and you can turn off your computer, you would pay like Filecoin to somebody to like store that indefinitely. That's the idea behind their storage, but that's not coming out probably till the end of the year or later, I would imagine. So.
Hey, since this is a private system, other than the ratings, is there any way to aggregate metrics on what's selling? So for like merchant services, so they can figure out what people are buying and how much they're paying for stuff?
You could only do it through ratings.
Yeah.
And you aren't required to rate, right? So it's kind of
There's just no stats.
Yeah, I mean, our investors hate it, right? And they're like, oh, how much sales have you done this? And we're like, I don't know, none, maybe 1 million, I don't know. We usually estimate higher, we're like, it's probably millions, you know?
I thought I heard you say two conflicting things. I think I just misheard. In terms of somebody selling something on there that's illicit, whatever. At first I thought I heard you say that you couldn't do anything about it, but then I later thought I heard you say you could take something off.
So yeah, that's the difference between the network itself and then our search engines. So like this content you're seeing right now and all these filters and stuff. So like if you look at the other search engine, he has different filters because that's generated by the search engine. So the search engines are centralized. The content that's within this results, like he could clearly remove these drugs from the listings and you wouldn't be able to access it. Now if I gave you the direct link to this item and passed it to you in a forum, you'd still get to it because it's all on the network, but the search engine wouldn't present it. So that is where it can be removed. And that's what I was talking about in terms of like your perspective of the network, right? Like the search engines are here are used to show users what they want to see. If you were using a search engine that doesn't have drug listings or guns or whatever it is in there, that's your view of the network. The other stuff exists, it's just you don't see it. So rather than just removing it completely, which we don't have control of. Okay.
So I guess kind of a two-parter. You said that you guys only use blockchain where it makes sense, and other aspects of OpenBazaar are centralized.
Mm-hmm.
Like what? I guess question one: what things are decentralized, and so what things are decentralized, and then the things that are centralized, what is preventing you from decentralizing?
Okay. Well, one I just mentioned was just search. Decentralized search is like very challenging. I don't even know if there's a way to do it reasonably well. And what I meant by that is just that, like, you know, this network has a lot of data, right? Images of the listings, the listing data themselves, the pricing, all this stuff, right? I mean, you could put it in the blockchain. Doesn't make much sense, right? Because it's like these listings might be short-lived. They might not want to sell it next week.
Right.
Why would that go in the blockchain forever? You know, so that's what I mean by that. Now, decentralization in general, like, I mean, that's like a hand wavy term. Like, it's a gradient, right? Like, it's not this is decentralized and this is centralized. It's probably somewhere in between. So we consider this still very decentralized, but in truth, it's only on a few peers at sometimes. So you know, it's kind of a hybrid. I mean, I guess the answer is just we just try to decide, you know, to lean on the content that only needs to be around for a little while is not in the blockchain. I don't know if that explains.
Just because there's no blockchain currently that is efficient enough to handle everything.
Well, I mean, all this stemmed out of kind of 2013, 2014 timeframe when we were worried about that. I don't know. I haven't seen anything now that. I mean, a lot of the systems are pegging content to the blockchain, or you know, they're storing pointers or something. They're trying to keep it lightweight on the blockchain, which I still think stands today, but I don't know, maybe tomorrow they'll come out with something that makes more sense.
You say earlier that the FBI called you last week or something.
Mm-hmm.
Why would you think that you have no responsibility against public places in case of, you know, someone putting a drug on the website? And how do you justify that?
I mean, that's a good question, but I mean, I think the idea is that we're creating software code. People can fork it, they can add it, they can change it. We're not like hosting any content. We're not facilitating those actions, right? Like, it's just like a web browser. Like, should a web browser be convicted because they have code that allows you to access drug websites? I mean, I don't know. I mean, I'm not trying to say yes, right or wrong, but that's not what happens in that case. I think, you know, the other thing is like, what is the motivation here? Like, are we creating this? Are we monetizing these types of activities? Are we making money from these guys selling drugs or whatever? No, it's just an open protocol. So I think that protects in a lot of ways. But who knows? I mean, like, we could be at severe risk. I mean, we have a legal team that we talk with all the time about these issues, and you know, a lot of times it's law enforcement just wants to understand, like, what are they up against? Like, what are they dealing with? This kind of technology probably agitates them somewhat, I would guess, because it makes it harder to do their job. But you know, our thought is, and based on our evidence over the last few years, you know, the amount of these types of listings is very low relative to the regular listings. The reason why his shows it like on the front page is because his is sorted by popularity on his website. And he's a website that's known for not censoring. So what do you think comes to the top? That kind of stuff. So, you know, I think right now, in general, we see about 1.5% to 2% of the listings are actually like people trying to sell like something that would be questionable. Okay, I don't want to go into the next person's talk, but and it looks like there's no more questions, so thank you very much.